Hello and welcome back to the KCC channel. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I have 6 stories for you from the Tales from Tech Support subreddit. Before we start that, if you're new here, make sure to hit that subscribe button. It's completely free and you can always change your mind later. Alright, on to the stories. Let's jump right in. This story comes to us from Elder65. Computer problems are mostly user problems. Circa 1996-97, our shop used PCs as thin clients connected to Novell servers. All applications and data resided on the server. Project Manager opened a ticket claiming her computer growled at her when she opened MS Word. That got the interest of the PC tech, the notes administrator, and the Novell CNE, and all 3 of us went to see this miracle. When we got to her desk, she opened MS Word and her computer started a stuttering sound. The 3 techs were at a loss and opened and closed Word, Excel, and PowerPoint a couple of times to see what all was affected. Then, one of the corporate system engineers who worked out of our building walked by, saw the gathering, and stopped to see what was going on. The PC tech opened MS Word so he could hear the computer growling. The engineer frowned at it a couple seconds, then reached down and pushed a stack of paper that was lying on the escape key. Growling stopped. That same engineer worked out of an oversized cubicle in the IT section. One time, the PC tech was called to a programmer's desk because the keyboard was acting weird. As he tested, he found that typing one key could put 4 or 5 characters on the screen. The engineer was coming back from a meeting and stopped to see what the problem was. The tech showed him by typing a key. The engineer immediately lifted one end of the keyboard and they watched as water poured out of the other end. Of course, the programmer denied spilling any water despite the half bottle of water with no cap sitting beside the keyboard. When troubleshooting problems at the user's desk or cubicle, look at the desk. Most user problems really do exist between the chair and the keyboard. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called DavidOB1. It says, remember, there are only 2 things you can depend on users doing. 1, the wrong thing. 2, then lying about it. Ah yes, the 2 most common errors that an IT person will find. The PEBCAC error, problem exists between keyboard and chair, and the ID10T error. If you don't know that one, write it down, you'll get it pretty quickly. I find it interesting how the PC tech themselves wasn't able to figure these ones out. It actually took a system engineer to walk in and realize what was happening both times. That PC tech might need a little extra training. This story comes to us from Didocta. Did you know you can still activate Windows XP by phone? A tale of recursion. My next door neighbor called me yesterday. He's an optometrist and was having troubles with one of his retinal cameras. I used to work as a tech for the company that sells this model, so it wasn't that unusual of a call. The model he has is a bit old now and doesn't work on modern Windows. It only runs on Windows XP. He has an old Windows 7 machine that has an XP mode VM running that then talks to the camera. The VM was not booting. I played about with it for a while, but kept getting blocked by his old Windows 7 machine that just wasn't playing nicely, and also because I didn't have all my old installation media with me. Who'd have thunk to pack a Windows XP CD? So I set up an FTP transfer of the VM files to my server and thought I'd just work on it at home. It took 3 hours to transfer, but it worked. So then I went down the rabbit hole of how to open this thing. VirtuBox didn't want a bar of them and Windows had removed the installer for their XP mode VM. I eventually found a working copy of the installer, but surprise surprise, it only runs on Windows 7. So I used a VirtuBox to set up a Windows 7 machine, then I installed the XP mode software. It all took me a while, but eventually I had that set up. I copied over the VM files and launched. Same error, but at least I was back to square one. I found I had an old XP ISO, so I loaded that into the virtual CD drive. I used it to run a repair on the VM build and success. Or so I thought. XP now wanted to be activated. Oh gosh, can you still activate XP? Apparently you can. I dialed the toll-free number, and after only 20 minutes of typing in the longest activation code in the world, I get the thing activated. XP boots, I hold my breath. Is this it? Would it let me in? No activation page, good start. But then it asks for the username and password. I don't know no username or password. I called my neighbor, he doesn't know it either. Of course not, why would he? I go back through my setup files and yes, I have the NT password changer ISO. I load that into the CD drive of the XP VM and restart. Menu, tiny writing, where are my glasses? Admin account, kill password, reset, I'm in. Now I just have to copy it all back and see if it works on their machine. Wish me luck. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Tommy Gun Quartet. It says, I remember trying to bypass the Windows password by booting into safe mode in school. Good times. I miss Windows XP. Life was simpler. I actually preferred having local user accounts over a Microsoft account. And those display pictures, mine was always the dirt bike. I also miss MSN. Oh my gosh, now I'm remembering back to the days of ICQ and MSN Messenger and all of the wonderful things we had back in the day. Oh, this story kind of left me surprised that OP held onto an old XP ISO and OP had the NT password changer ISO as well. I don't have files from 3 weeks ago, let alone ones from 20 years ago. This story comes to us from David Gray. Word must have done it on its own. A few years ago, I was doing tech support in a school. A kid walked up to the help desk with his netbook and said, "My assignment won't open, can you help me?" I said sure and took a look at the file. It was a Word document, but wouldn't open. No problem, I'll just open the file in Notepad to see if the file was corrupted or a different format or whatever. Right there in the header section, I see the letters PNG. So I renamed the document from assignment.doc to assignment.png and a picture shows up. It's the kid's name drawn in MS Paint, obviously done using the crappy little touchpad on the Dell netbooks the school had purchased for the students. I spin the machine around to face him and said, "I found the problem, it wasn't a Word document, it was a drawing you did in Paint, and tried to pass it off as your assignment that's due today." He looked mock confused and said, "I didn't do that. Perhaps Word must have done it on its own." I said, "Mate, this is your name, written in your handwriting, using this very touchpad, done in Paint. You can fool your teacher, but don't try and fool the tech guy. Here's your netbook. I suggest you go and do the assignment properly. I'll email your teacher to let them know what the outcome was." I know kids will be kids, but I just had a good chuckle remembering this particular kid who tried to BS me and say Microsoft Word corrupted his assignment in a way that A, made it into a PNG instead of a Word document, and B, managed to mimic his handwriting perfectly. This was a decade before AI even became a thing. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Captain Zippy. It says, "It's worse when the adults do it. The computer deleted my document. You must restore it from backup. It's right there in your recycle bin. Your faulty computer must have moved it there itself. That's not how it worked. The computer did it. The computer did it." This person was middle-aged when I got to dealing with them. Another commenter down below called Bailey the Nerd said, "Ah man, that was my favorite way to get more time on assignments back in the 2010s. I would make a Word doc, fill it out to the length of the assignment with junk, open it in Notepad, and then just delete a random chunk of text somewhere in the middle. Worked like a charm. Eventually had to stop doing it because teachers were becoming suspicious that the unofficial tech support for the school was having so many issues with corrupt files. It wasn't mentioned in the story, but I have to assume that the teacher sent this kid to the tech person in the school to find out what was going on. Did the kid still think they were going to get away with it with somebody who knew what they were doing looking at the computer? It just seems like a very odd situation. This story comes to us from Pilot Avery. Customer panicked because I successfully retrieved all his files. I run a small, all-inclusive computer repair business. This includes component level motherboard and appliance repair, all the way to network and security help. Just about everything. I was an electrical engineer apprentice before doing this, so I'm able to do repairs many people aren't. One day, a customer walked in with a roughly 5-year-old Lenovo ThinkPad with a mechanical hard drive and completely torn apart. The bottom cover was loose, and even the CPU heat pipe was bent out of place, Wi-Fi cables pulled and ripped from the hinges, etc. I figured this is really odd, but you know, people have kids, and I've seen everything. I don't have the password to this laptop, but I really want to use it again. Can you factory reset it? Sure, that's not a big deal. It looks like the drive isn't encrypted, so would you like me to just remove the password? No, that's okay, thank you. You can just reset it. Okay. Is there any data on this that you specifically want to keep? No, not really. You can just delete everything if it's easier. Okay, great. So I take this laptop upstairs and I notice that it's running really slow. So I toss in a cheap SATA SSD that came out of another junk laptop and install a fresh copy of Windows. It grabs all the drivers from Windows Update. I don't have to do anything. Perfect. Now I have his drive sitting next to his laptop. And while his laptop is a pile of junk, it does boot up and work, and the Wi-Fi connects, which means he can browse the web with it. Great. Just for good measure, I plug in his hard drive and browse to his user folder and drop it on the desktop of the new installation. So I call him back to let him know it's ready. Hey, your laptop's ready. I was able to move all of your files over to the desktop, but you'll have to see what you want to keep and get rid of. Just wanted to make sure you still have access to them in case you change your mind about it. Oh, no, it's not mine. I found the laptop. I don't need any of the files on it. Actually, I don't really need it. You can just keep it. I think I'll buy another one anyway. Are you sure? I got it all ready to go for you, and it's a pretty nice little machine, given the condition. You can still use it on a desk to browse the web. No man, really, keep it. It's not mine. I don't need it. I found it anyway, and I have no idea what's on it. This is just weird to me. I've never had a customer ask me to fix a computer and then panic while telling me he doesn't want it anymore. So I dig around in his user folder, and basically among a bunch of school files and Word documents is a hidden folder called Adult-Oriented Videos. Okay, now I'm thinking that I might find something very wrong and might have to report him. Nope, it was internet links to a super common video hub for enticing online videos, and a couple videos from a well-known actor downloaded through an online video downloader. Nothing to bat an eye at. The way that he panicked over the phone when I told him I was able to successfully retrieve his data was something I had never seen before. OP added an edit down at the bottom of this one. It says, edit. Those of you who work in the corporate IT side probably are thinking that these practices sound wrong. If you've only ever worked in corporate IT, then you understand how important it is to follow stringent procedures. And then there are those of you who work on the customer-facing side, dealing with walk-ins. And to all of you guys, you get it. Most of the time, and I mean honest to God, literally more than a half, customers who say they do not need their data ask if I was able to successfully back up anything for them, even if they said they don't want to pay to get it off. They will still ask if I was able to at least save their bookmarks or photos or whatever. If I don't, I'm met with a disappointed, well, I guess that's fine, but it really sucks that I had those family photos on there, etc. For those who work more on the corporate side, let me explain why. Customers are stupid. It's very often that a customer says they don't need anything and it's okay if it gets wiped, and then they are upset when their bookmarks are gone or are disappointed I wasn't able to save their data. Usually, they just mean they don't want to spend billable hours on it. Also, more than 50% of the time, the customer ends up asking if I was able to retrieve their bookmarks, or at least their photos, or at least their TurboTax data. After the fact, I didn't even keep a copy on my own drive. I simply moved it over onto his own computer again. If he had explicitly asked me to delete everything in a factory reset so it's fresh, then I wouldn't have even bothered to copy the data. But he came to me specifically because he said he forgot the password, which implies that he was using it for work and stuff. Also, asking if there's anything you need on it and answering no is different than coming in saying, "Hey, I would like you to delete the files on this, please." He didn't even ask me to delete the files, really, until I asked how important the data was to him. Most customers just answer, "Oh, you can delete it regardless of how important it is." If you know, you know. Okay, how many of you out there are thinking that there was still something else on this computer that OP missed? Because there's no reason to freak out like this kid did at a couple of links to a certain hub of videos online. OP mentioned that it was just the user folder that they dragged over to the desktop. I'm guessing there's something else on that hard drive outside of the user folder that OP doesn't want anybody to ever see. Creepy. This story comes to us from Extreme SK. Guess who is losing their job? Short answer, it's me. This happened today. Let me tell you a short story. Our company is currently undergoing migration from Google Workspace to M365 because half of the company either use Google or Microsoft. My boss wants to use only one system. I was doing a migration of one phone because we use Google device policy, and apparently the only way to get rid of it is to reinstall the whole phone. So I had one empty phone where I would transfer all the data and then factory reset the phone with the device policy. After this, transfer all the data back to the original Android phone without device policy. After I've wiped the original phone, I've also accidentally wiped the second phone where was all the data waiting to be transferred back. So that means that I've lost all the phone data for the user and there was no backup. Photos, documents, contacts, messages, 2FAs, all gone. Whoopsie. I was asked by my boss if I can help with the migration, and I said yes, even when my main role is web dev. I wanted to help the company. Now I'm the biggest idiot in the IT department. Jumping into the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called ResponsibleEnd7361. It says, "Sorry to hear that, though it seems like an honest mistake. If you get fired just for something like that, you are probably better off in any other company." OP responded to this one and said, "Yes, it was an honest mistake. I was working under pressure on 2 to 3 devices at the same time because users wanted the phones back fast." OP, I completely agree with this commenter. You're not even supposed to be doing that job. It's not in your job description. So you made a mistake, and mistakes definitely happen, especially when you're being tossed into an area that you're not used to being in. If they fire you over this, they've got to have other stuff on you as well that you're not telling us about. Also, another way you could handle this one is just tell them, "Oh, well, I'm not quite sure what happened, but the phone just kind of borked itself while I was in the process of doing the update. Nobody needs to know it was you who lost the data. Blame it on the device." This story comes to us from Spark Mike. How I fixed an old and obsolete eye imaging device a hospital wouldn't dispose. The machine is a Stratus OCT 3000. It has a system unit with Windows 2K Pro, P4, 512 megs of RAM, and a 4GB DVDRW in the optical drive as added storage. This controls the main imaging apparatus. The issue was that the imaging software wouldn't open the UI because it fails to connect to its database. First, I'd like to say that I'm a self-taught technician, so there is no way I was fit to fix this machine from Carl Zeiss running proprietary software. Anyway, I decided to try a hand at it. The hospital called like 7 or so database specialists since Carl Zeiss told them they quit support for the machine in 2008. I arrive and everyone is on their laptops researching and reading the manual. I take the captain's seat and start exploring. I then find myself in Control Panel and spot Interbase Manager. Opening it shows that there are 0 servers running and 0 databases. Apparently, the other guys didn't get to it before because they dropped everything to focus on my explorational progress. We figured out it runs on SQL. I don't know SQL, so they immediately start copying the various schemas we found. We all leave it that night without any progress, but the hospital staff say that I've made the most progress since they started bringing in technicians. I spend days researching, and I find out Carl Zeiss weren't helpful. There were no such issues online, so I had to resort to contacting various IT personnel from hospitals that had similar equipment. Even companies that sold them, but none were familiar with the matter or could help. I then resort to looking for the company that made Interbase, but they had rebranded twice. They happen to support the Interbase version 7.1 that we have, but they wouldn't assist us since the machine is outdated. I said to hell with it. I'll try creating a new database because I always wanted to explore the IB console program I saw a few weeks back when I was there. I created a new server and database, but couldn't populate the domains, tables, tabs, etc. Although IB Manager recognized the database, but the imaging software still wouldn't load the database. The hospital later called me saying Carl Zeiss sent someone all the way there to fix it, and that I should also go. I then find him scrolling through company troubleshooting manuals for the machine, which weren't of any help because they implied we reboot the machine. I proceed to tell him of my progress. Stunned by what I did, he saw the only option now was to reinstall the imaging software, which he had a copy of. It still wouldn't load the database until after I created a new server and database from a database file I spotted in a folder named Backup in the DBDRW. I'm not sure if reinstalling the imaging software helped, but I'm glad we met with the guy because he expressed his respects and took my number, and that made me happy. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, there's one from a user called Dervish666. It says, "Love it. It's not about the certificates you have, or even sometimes the experience. Sometimes it's just the right mindset. You obviously have it. Respect." OP, you do realize they're gonna call you for anything that goes wrong with any other electronic appliance in that place because you were able to figure this out even though it's not what you're trained on. Also, you're liable for anything that happens too, just so you know. Did you know every KCC video is also produced in podcast form? You can search for Karma Comment Chameleon on every major podcasting platform. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.